one point you made is you may not realize where you're going, um, but you're actually moving in that particular direction. You don't know what it is until like the future. And that's so true. I have said that numerous times. There are multiple favorable decisions I've made in my life that have always come through to be supportive, and things that I didn't necessarily recognize at that time. I mean, you can look at family, my spouse, it's been incredible in terms of the support. My partners are absolutely amazing. And I would recommend for anyone in real estate to partner. Partners are probably like the best thing you can ever do in real estate. It allows you to play off of different expertise.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable, real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. So if you started your real estate journey as an LP, a limited partner, and then stepped your way up and on a journey to be an active real estate investor. And that active is actually becoming a general partner, becoming a sponsor, those kind of things. Well, very interesting conversation today of that happening, going from LP, going then into duplex, triplex, quadplex, into multifamilies, and now has amassed a very, very cool portfolio. We're going to talk about this too. This is a high-end portfolio. So today's guest actually is from the West Coast in California and is acquiring properties at very, very, very high cost per unit situations. We're going to talk about this and how this guest made this make sense. Was all about the perspective. And so imagine if you had a 3-unit and it cost you $1 million. Right? Here's another 3-unit, cost $2 million. How do you make that cash flow? And what's the perspective that we have to maintain in order to hit this? Well, I tell you what, it's appreciation. And I am very appreciative of today's guest. Today's guest is a hematologist, an oncologist, and a real estate investor, real estate syndicator. Everybody, please welcome to the show, Sanjay Sharma. So we are here spread across the United States today. I'm excited to have our guest here today. Welcome to the show, Sanjay.
Brad, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And it's always fun kind of like starting into these conversations and where do we start? For the listeners out there who haven't been on podcasts, we always talk about, hey, where can we bring the most value to you guys, the listeners? And today I'm excited because we got a little bit of a different topic here to talk about. Obviously, we're going to talk about real estate. We've got an awesome physician in the virtual house who is also a real estate investor who's working to push everybody towards that freedom kind of side of life. And how are they getting there? Using real estate as a vehicle to get there. I'm excited to learn more about this little niche that you've got yourself in, Sanjay, and learn more about you. So let's start off by telling the listeners a little bit about your medical career so far.
Sure. So my medical career. So I'm a full-time hematologist oncologist in Southern California. I've been doing this. Let's see, I graduated medical school last century. So I've been a doctor for 25 years or so. And I've been a hematologist oncologist, finished fellowship in 2005. So I've been in this practice for 19 years. So that's general hematology, oncology for adults. So cancer and benign and malignant hematology.
Nice. And it's the use of words are so entertaining. When you say last century, it's crazy. It's like 100 years ago. Man, how old is Sanjay?
Right.
No,
Right.
that's amazing. Amazing for sure. So congratulations on that journey. Before we leap into real estate, I want to learn a little bit more about why real estate. I mean, when did you start? Because everybody, works to become a physician and to live that life. What were some of the hangups that you found that kind of pushed you outside of the medical world and into other avenues for revenue generation?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that it was hangups in medicine. I love what I do. I love managing patients, cancer survivors, and treating them and being with the families. I truly, truly love that and the research that's done. I've always had this entrepreneurial itch. I've always wanted to see what else is out there. I've never been convinced that the easy path, if you will, in terms of finances is the right path to go on, in the sense of put your money in a 401k, let it sit. I do believe there's a whole industry behind it, which makes people, it's very successful. I mean, I see it with my family, I've seen it with my parents, but I really think that there's more out there. And I didn't know what those avenues are. It just took some time and it took some explorations to figure out that, yeah, real estate is what fits my interest in terms of my risk profile. If it's my risk profile, actually, I would say that plays a big role into it because I find that you can, the real estate, if done appropriately, can be really a risk mitigated type of financial vehicle. I've done risky things like, well, when I say risky things, I've done investing in private companies. I think investing in individual stocks is risky. So I've done that. I didn't like anything. I didn't like any of those. I lost plenty of money. I've always had an inclination for real estate. When I got married, my wife's family, they're into real estate. They own properties, multifamilies in LA. And I kind of saw what they were doing and they kind of piqued my interest a little bit. And it's something that once I got the opportunity, I dipped my toes in. I spent a whole heck of a lot of time reading and understanding. As typical doctor fashion, I had to read 1,000 books and spend 150,000 hours trying to understand what it was, looking at the spreadsheets, before I was able to get kind of the profile of it. And then I just started doing it. And then we went from being LP investors on very, very successful projects to duplex and triplexes to quads to 18 units and then hundreds of units. So
Nice.
I kind of answered your question in there.
Yeah, and jumped right into the real estate piece. That's interesting that, you mentioned profile. It makes me think of risk adverse and just the medicine in general, what it takes to be a good doctor, the trainings, the procedures, and that, 150 thousand hours and the studying of everything. I mean, that's who you are in medicine, and that's why you do what you do in medicine. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of the listeners out there, that's going to turn and translate into the real estate world, and we stumble against this analysis paralysis kind of direction. So it's interesting that you mentioned that stuff and the idea that the risk mitigated approach in real estate. It is an inefficient market, different than anything that you'll see in your typical 401ks
Yeah.
and money market stuff, because that's an efficient market.
Yeah.
And for the listeners out there, kind of like the difference in my mind of those two pieces is the readily available information that can be pulled by the masses. So the efficient markets, they can pull whether it's projections, which I mean, it's made up anyway when it comes to projections, what a company thinks they're going to make, and then the actual. So this is information that can be pulled by the masses. It's interesting, Sanjay, that real estate is the inefficient market because if you know where to go to get the information, it seems like it still can be attained. So I'm just struggling with the inefficient piece. But when you know those, it's like you're saying, that's the way that you mitigate your risk. Some other ways you mitigate your risk too is going to be working with the right team, experienced team. I think you did a great way of stepping your way into that, starting as an LP, the limited partner where basically you have no control. You don't have a lot of time commitment, right? That limited piece, but you get in with the right people, you can learn a lot from that. And you moved into an active investor going into the duplexes, triplexes, quads, and then into multis. I think that's a great approach. Would you suggest that approach for other people as well?
Um, yes and no. In fact, I was having the discussion with my sister this morning because her kids and my kids are well, my kids are a little bit younger, but they're in college, post college, and we were just talking about the importance of mentorship. And my oldest son is going to start college, and what I've told him is I said, hey, you know what? Figure your stuff out in college, but leave with some sort of strategy and plan that you can execute. So in this 4 years, explore everything that you want, but come out and say, this is what I'm doing for a job, a career, a business, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be the right path, but there just needs to be a path.
Hmm.
So in the discussion I had with my sister today, one of her daughters is in college, and we're talking about, well, how do you decide that path? You can experiment, you can do what I did, where I read and I study, which is the nature of all physicians. But what if you get mentorship? What if you get someone early on? And this is something I think I would have done earlier on. If a decade ago I had greater mentorship than me trying to figure it out on myself, I think I would have moved faster because my intentions were always to grow big, to do big deals. As much as I love the duplexes and triplexes, I knew even while I was doing it, and they were very lucrative. Even while I was doing it, I was like, this is not enough. This is not enough. So, do I recommend a person to go along the same path as I did? Not necessarily, or in what you were saying, kind of taking stepwise. Well, one thing, I never bought a single family residence as an investment. I don't know. I mean, I think if you get true mentorship, or if you get mentorship and you can try to understand what you want to do, maybe you can start much bigger. Or maybe if you're in a particular asset market, there's a lot of people who are very, very successful and do fantastic in single family residences. Maybe at the beginning, they buy the better ones as opposed to the beginner ones, if you will.
The
So
tuition, the ones that afford you the tuition of learning what not to do, right?
yeah, because you're gonna screw up no matter what, right? I mean, or
Yeah.
actually, they screw up. You're gonna make mistakes here, and I've definitely made mistakes. But I think there's a lot of ways to do it. I really think that people kind of we hear this all the time, right? Even before we were talking about, you had like kind of like this philosophical way of looking at things, but you got to kind of figure out what you want. And it's like my kids. They don't need to go to college and say, hey, you know what? I want this particular job in this particular city on this particular street at this particular payments, but they just need to move in that direction and understand kind of what their needs and what their wants are. And a lot of us in our field, especially in the MD entrepreneurship and kind of the MD influencer, we always talk about that. Okay, what are you seeking? What are the freedoms you're seeking? And is real estate one of those avenues in which you can reach that? And if so, what particular asset class? And how do you become an expert in it? There's no doctor who said, I'm kind of going to be a doctor. We all said, I'm going to be the best that we absolutely can be. We all sought out the best training, the best techniques, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Pick a path, a path. It doesn't have to be the final path, the finished path. And along that journey, finding those mentors is so important.
Yeah.
I found this. We all have. I'm so visual, and I'm talking, moving my hands around as I'm talking here, and stretching this thing out like elastic, stretching these shorts out, and that's our life. As I stretch that out, and we have these stack of experiences that come along the way. What's really interesting is the unique stack of experiences that we have, whether it may be that first duplex into the tri, in your path into the Maltese, even with your wife's family having that multi in LA already. So you've got these unique stack of experiences. The really cool thing, Sanjay, that I've kind of sought after and noticed is the small pivots that happen
Mhm.
on a path, right? I've picked this path, and sometimes we don't even know that we've picked the path, but these unique stack of experiences line up. And if you stay consistent, that's so big. If you stay
Yeah.
consistent and if you do pivot, just that 1 degree pivot, because then you're leveraging all of these stacks of experience to kind of continue and
Yeah.
be consistent in this path. So consistency plays so much into it. I was thinking today, man, if you could just, and I've got, my son is 11, and he's starting to get passionate about these certain things, and just trying to figure out, like, if it's just consistency, if you could just be consistent on what you're doing, man, there's so much to that, and even so much to learn too, Sanjay, if there was just consistency in the errors. Like, if you could learn consistently from the errors that you're making,
Yep.
then they take that 1 degree pivot, and then you find that a path is the path 10 years later, right?
No, for sure. I think you said that very, very well. And one point you made is you may not realize where you're going, um, but you're actually moving in that particular direction. You don't know what it is until like the future, and
Yeah.
that's so true. I have said that numerous times. There are multiple favorable decisions I've made in my life that have always come through to be supportive, and things that I didn't necessarily recognize at that time. I mean, you can look at family, my spouse, it's been incredible in terms of the support. My partners are absolutely amazing. And I would recommend for anyone in real estate to partner. Partners are probably like the best thing you can ever do in real estate. It allows you to play off of different expertise and move them together. And another thing, you get bad days. Like again, talk before when we were in the green room, you're talking about, man, there's road bumps in life, but you just keep going over them. That is so darn true. There are days where you're just like, oh my God, this kind of like things kind of stink, but I got partners who it may not be stinking. And then they just kind of keep pushing you along. And again, this happened to me recently in one of our MD groups where someone's like, guys, I've been kind of like on the DL all summer. You haven't heard from me. Let me tell you what was really going on. Crap was hitting the fan. And then all of a sudden we're all like, a couple things. We're like, we know what you mean. Because some were like, yeah, it's hitting me now. Or someone's like, yeah, it hit me yesterday, or hit me the day before, or it's going to hit me tomorrow. And then you just kind of keep pushing along. So that's kind of what you're talking about when you're being consistent, because you're going to try to be derailed. Like look at what I do. I'm a doctor. I don't have to do real estate. I don't have to do all this entrepreneurial stuff. It is very easy for me to just kind of give up. You know, I've got a good job. I'm in a good situation. But that entrepreneurial bug kind of keeps going at me. So instead of getting derailed, I'm still moving in that particular direction. Like you're saying, learn from your mistakes, learn from your errors, stay consistent, and you'll continue to grow.
Yeah. And best and worst, that relationship piece, the partner can be the best and the worst piece,
Excuse me.
depending on how that's vetted. I want to dive into that, but sometimes when I feel, like when those hurdles do come on that I was talking about earlier, and if I'm running this race and I'm making these hurdles, and all of a sudden I start tripping and knocking these hurdles down, and I feel like, man, there's some days where I feel like I've knocked 3 or 4 down in a row, and then I get on a meeting with one of my partners, and there's just a smile on his face and this comfort, like everything's going to be all right. We've
Yeah.
got this, right? Just and just that reassurance of trusting the process, right? We're trusting the process, trusting who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it. And those are the moments that those are the best, but they can also be the worst. Some relationships, just like some people's marriage, I'm thankful to God that I've been blessed with an amazing wife that's really become the other part of me and has lifted me so high above anything I could ever imagine. But some relationships, some marriages are not like that. It's the opposite of that. Drag you down, tear you apart. And that just comes into how we're vetting it. Real estate is the business of relationships. And leveraging relationships is so important, just like we leverage technology, we leverage systems, all of that stuff. How are we vetting people? And not just our partners, Sanjay, but how are we vetting mentors to take these quantum leaps in a path to turn it to the path?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. Like, how do you, that mentor-mentee relationship is so important. Again, going back to medicine, this is how we learn. This is when you're a med student, you look up to your intern. When you're an intern, you look up to your resident to your attending, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of how we're designed as physicians to think and to learn. When you go into entrepreneurship and you go into real estate, it's a different field because you really don't know who's good and who's not good. I think the way you learn is you start networking with people and you start understanding who are the people who have similar ideas. In terms of my partners, we were able to understand each other because we had similar interests. And that always comes up in conversations with us, and why we joined together. We're a physician-owned company is because we had similar interests. We had similar values. We had similar aspirations in terms of entrepreneurship. We actually came together because we all had a similar mentor. How I particularly picked my mentor, I knew my mentor for many years. Not he was a close friend of a close friend, So I kind of knew what he did. He was also a physician, and he was also a real estate entrepreneur, and investor. So those were the pathways in that which I wanted to move towards. So it was a natural fit for us. I had trust in him because he was a friend of a friend, and I got to know him and his family. We came from similar backgrounds. We were both physicians, and he had success in where I wanted to go into success. So I was lucky I wouldn't say lucky. I sought out a good mentor and I found a good mentor. I have seen other people who go through different mentorship programs, and I've seen some people bounce around to kind of find out who the right mentor is. So I think it's a lot about networking and learning who the people are, and then having the courage to go up to them and ask for interest and ask for help, whether it's paid coaching, whatever it may be, whether it's in a group where you kind of do like-minded things.
Yeah.
So I didn't give you an exact spreadsheet in terms of how to vet a mentor, but that's how I did.
Yeah.
That's how I am doing it. And then the other thing, and again, this goes back to medicine, and it goes back to studies. I always felt that I needed to be in a room with better physicians, smarter folks, better institutions, and I would work up to that standard. So likewise, when we are doing deals, when we are partnering for people, I am looking for people who have different skill sets than I do. I don't want to be, I mean, everyone says this, but I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I don't want to be the expert in the room. Although, again, I'm going back to medicine. I am typically an expert in the room. When I'm walking in the patient's room, I am the oncologist. I know what I'm doing and I'm making decisions. But I'm always learning around other people. So when I am partnering with Titan 3 Capital, partners with others, we are looking for something in addition that they're bringing to the table that we can learn. And like you were saying, you can leverage, and I can leverage off of that expertise.
The values aligning are so important, and it makes me think of building that culture almost like a religion, but building that culture when you're building a business or when you're
Yeah.
building that partnership. That culture is number one, and the values have to align, the goals have to align, everybody has to be working in the same direction. Once those values align, it's similar to how we choose that asset class that we like. You really have to go after something that kind of makes your bell ring a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And once you find that, you can go after that. But when we're talking about these values aligning and the idea of choosing a mentor, it makes me think of Jim Rohn. Probably where I've got this. I tell everybody Jim Rohn should be a high school class. It should be like 2 semesters. Yeah, I had 2 semesters of Jim Rohn. That just sounds right to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, the idea of understanding who you need to become to reach these goals that you're setting. And this idea of who I need to become, that has to align with the values that I have, and
Yeah.
then set out to find that person who is already that person that I want to become. So those values align. And then that's when, if they are already doing what I want to do and they've already become that person that I want to become, that would be a great fit for a mentor. And it sounds like that you found that, especially paired as a physician and a real estate investor.
Yeah.
Very cool. Talking about aligning the values, this is a great jump into this niche that you found. And
Yeah.
just briefly before jumping onto this conversation, I just always just do a little bit of research and poke around. I love when investors have their portfolios up so I can see them. And as soon as you tell me I've got properties in California, that already tells me it's going to be really expensive. So I get my first question out there.
Yeah.
And then I see some of these properties that you have, especially these newer ones, Sanjay, just are gorgeous. And then you bring in the D word, development, and that the complexity of that, the cost, just, I mean, there's so much. We could talk for hours and hours about this. So I want to jump in this. First of all,
Yeah.
how are these properties comparable to investing in other places? Because if we're looking at, some standard multi-unit stuff, just some rough numbers, at 80,000 to 100,000 a unit, you can get some pretty nice units between 80,000 and 100,000. Class B, upwards, even above that in some areas. some of your units are much, much higher than that. Tell us a little bit about the advantages that you have at that price point per unit.
Well, I'll start off by saying I wish I would have found the 100,000 units to begin with. That would have been, well, not easier to do, but more palatable in terms of the capital that you need to bring.
Yeah,
All right. Well, I mean, I'm in Southern California, so it's the prices don't scare me as much. I'm used to this. I'm used to, and I recognize that per square foot, we're a whole heck of a lot more. My personal home per square foot is a whole heck of a lot of, compared to other parts of the country. So you start out by saying, well, that's the baseline. So you don't really think past that. When I first started investing, I didn't want to go outside of my own backyard.
yeah,
And that's what the prices are here. So you know, just by nature, I went in there. Secondly, I remember one of the first LinkedIn posts I posted however many years ago. I talked about, people ask for where are the deals, and I'm like driving around and I got my phone and I'm just filming. I was like, these are all multifamily. It doesn't matter what street you're on. There are multifamilies everywhere. And we're a big city, Orange County or a big county. LA is a big city, but
yeah,
we're not New York City, which has skyscrapers and stuff. So deals are everywhere. Secondly, I recognize what the market is. There's always going to be a need. Southern California is not going to suddenly dissipate from its population. As much as people like to say that people like to leave California because of the prices, there's plenty of people here.
yeah.
Um, a ton of value add properties. I mean, if you talk about, one of the deals I did was truly in the path of progress. Um, and it was just so obvious that it was in the path of progress that it was just kind of a no-brainer. So the price didn't matter to me as so much. I mean, the price mattered in the terms about the capital you have to bring to the deal, but in terms of the value add you can bring to it and the money you're able to make with our super low cap rates, it just makes sense. There was deals where I would buy units where we were renting under $1,000, and then by the time we finished, it was renting over $3,000.
Holy cow.
So, that's different than a market which has 80,000 or $100,000 per door. Um, so it kind of made sense, and
Yeah,
I was willing to go out elsewhere. So it never really affected me, except I knew when I was buying a triplex for or a quad for 1.5 million or 2 million, outside of Southern California, that would have bought me a lot more units.
yeah. It's interesting. And I had a conversation a couple weeks ago. This investor's perspective was the return on equity. So just the position, the equity that you put into it is I guess a perspective to maintain. Just always tippy toe around the idea of cash flow until that idea. So if you're in at 1,000 a unit income and you've got so much capital out, that's got to be hard to cash flow sometimes, right?
Well, the deals I did in Southern California, we always cash flowed. Um, I mean, another thing you're referring to is we have significant appreciation in Southern California.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all around us. So yeah, our deals. I mean, if you have a cap rate of 3 and you just bring
Wow.
up your NOI a little bit, that's a healthy appreciation
Hmm.
um, that you get. So the first deals I did in Southern California, yeah, they were expensive, but they paid off well.
Yeah.
Uh, I learned a lot. I mean, dealing with a duplex here versus dealing duplex somewhere else is the same degree of, intellect, the same degree of
Yeah.
property management, et cetera. You do landscaping here, you do landscaping there. It's the same. The
So
concept is the same.
I've got one for you, Sanjay. The first duplex that I bought was in Southwest Michigan. I
Mhm.
bought it for 145,000,
Right.
and it needed no work. I mean, since then, through the years, I've turned each unit. Actually, one unit we're turning tomorrow, the first turn on that unit. But turn as in renovation. We've had tenants come in and come out. We've not needed to redo the floors or anything like that. So 145,000. Each side gets about right around $1,300 a month
Nice.
uh, in income. So let's just take give me a typical Southern California duplex.
All right, so let me think. So I remember I was doing value add.
Yeah.
So
Okay, hold on a second then. So the
yeah,
value add piece, this property that I bought for 145 now is probably around probably 240, 240, 260, somewhere in there.
good job. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm trying to think about some of those early duplexes, but again, they were value add. I mean, I bought a duplex for under 1 million, um, but we added a unit onto it.
Oh wow.
So I sold it as a
Try.
triplex. So we probably made, let me see. Now, how much did I pay for that? Now I'm trying to remember. Um, we probably made 40% on that just by adding that triplex to it.
Wow.
Um, so and then let me think what the cash flow would have been on it. We're probably getting the front unit, I think it was like 3,800. The back units were close to about, yeah, I think I'm forgetting the numbers now. I'm embarrassed. I
Yeah,
should know.
yeah.
So I mean our monthly income was probably close to 10 on that triplex.
Yeah. So
Uh,
definitely cash flowing. Yeah.
yeah, but it was the appreciation part, making
Yep.
40% on a very quick turnaround. I didn't hold on that property for long at all.
Right.
I used that to just then go to a triplex and a quad. I then exchanged it to 7 units.
Yep. And when you exchange, you were doing 1031s
Yeah,
to
exchange
not get taxed on that
rate.
capital gain.
Yeah,
Nice. Nice. So yeah, it's all about perspective, Sanjay. And I'm sure like if just
yeah,
that piece, that appreciation piece is huge. And it's so important to, oh my goodness, I've had so many conversations where people will target appreciation, but then they have to. It basically they get a knife in their side for 3 to 5 years until their projections hit. I'm thinking to myself, why would you do this to yourself?
yeah,
I just understand. But on a bigger perspective, on these things that are cash flowing, and now let's fast forward this just a little bit to these beauties. And you actually have one open opportunity right now,
yeah,
as well too. I'm seeing two at the top of your stack in Philly.
yeah.
And these two in Philly that I'm seeing on the site, both are under development, massive, gorgeous properties. One's a 200 unit and the other one's a 341 unit. Holy mercy. Congratulations. That's awesome. How does that feel?
It feels good. It feels good. But so, okay, so let's talk about risk mitigation. Let's talk about the story about these.
Yeah.
So, Titan 3 Capital, we're physician-owned companies, and we say we want to build communities worth living. So, my communities are doctors, professionals. So, this is UPenn. We're building in UPenn territory. So, all my investors at one time or another have lived around medical centers and have trained around medical centers. That community to us, it doesn't matter where it is, right? It could be in Detroit next to a medical center. It could be in Houston next to a medical center, here in LA next to a medical center, and UPenn and next to a medical center. Is that I can walk into any hospital in the country and I feel comfortable. I
Mhm.
can walk into any community surrounding a medical center and I feel comfortable because it's so second nature to us. So we're building communities worth living in. Secondly, we particularly emphasize education and research. So we used a different metric in this particular building. We use the metric of NIH dollars. That's National Institute of Health dollars. And that's how all medical institutions rank themselves on where they stand in terms of the research world. UPenn has been around for hundreds of years. They've always been in that top 10 NIH research dollars. Okay. So a different metric than necessarily just using population growth or unemployment growth. Where is NIH dollars going? Then the second thing that we did in terms of NIH dollars, not only is where the money is going, but how much of the research is resulting in FDA approved product. And bam,
Conversion.
there's just a small handful across the United States that meet that says, okay, communities worth living in Ivy League institutions, top research dollars in terms of NIH, and converting to FDA products. And then we're going to throw on top of that in land constricted areas. So it's not that there's tons and tons of lands to build out. And all of that hit. So that by itself is mitigating a lot of these risks. Then what we did is we spent some time, we spent some time acquiring these properties. And while under contract, we got all the permitting. So we're fully permitted, and we got a unique permit from the city of Philadelphia where we're not required to build any affordable housing. So now
Mm.
every single apartment unit can be at top market rent. And quite frankly, no one can compete with us because that permit now is no one can get that permit anymore. So we're in such a unique position in which we hit kind of all the check marks in terms of where we can feel comfortable, can feel affiliated to it. We got all the permits that doesn't exist anymore, so we don't have competition. And then the other thing we're doing is we're building for physicians and professionals. We're not building student housing.
Mhm.
So everything kind of clicked. And then, like when I was telling you that we like Titan 3 Capital, we always want to partner with people who are um, at a different degree or greater advance than us. So we partner with development partners that have been doing this and have done billions of dollars. And then they are also partnered with institutional level investors. So it's not just me doing the spreadsheet, doing the underwriting, it's institutions, pensions underwriting these deals.
Mhm.
So I keep stacking on stacking on stacking, making this a more risk mitigated type of investment. And so that's how we're able to do it. But
And
yeah, we're
hence
very, very proud of it.
the lower and the lower that cap goes too, right?
So the cap rate on that one, I think it's 5.5 on it.
Okay.
But you have such surrounding data um, protecting that. I mean,
Yep.
it almost becomes a no-brainer for a physician to invest in something. Well, that's not fair for me to say. I don't want to say no brainer because there's a lot that goes into it, and you should always respect in terms of how a person is analyzing a deal. And even if they don't analyze it the same way as you are, it
Yep.
is still their analysis, it's still their perspective. But it is something that I mean, this is a deal that I'm looking forward to my grandkids, having cash flow off of this. That this is
Nice.
true generational wealth.
So on both of these, the 200 unit and the 341, when is the projected completion date? Actually, a better question was start to finish from groundbreaking to
Yeah.
handing over the first key or cutting the ribbon. What's that time
Uh,
look like?
Yeah, so there we have two projects running. One is a year ahead than the other one. So the one that's a year ahead is breaking ground as we speak. And
That's
the other
exciting.
one we closed on the actual land in the property this past January, and that's going to break ground next summer.
Wow.
Uh, the one that's breaking ground this year, in 4 years will be fully leased up.
Wow. Wow.
uh, our investors will be getting significant returns in 4 years.
Wow.
Our deal that we closed on this past January, we had early investors, so they're actually going to get returns if they want next year, or if they want to stay in the deal, then another 4 years of it.
And on development projects, there's a lot stretched out. Here I go again, stretching my shorts out. What does that look like for, say, those first 2 years when there's no income being generated, right? There's 4 years and then it's fully leased. So what's the payout and that preferred payout kind of structure look like on a
Yeah,
development project?
yeah. So you're separated, understandably, from a cash flowing existing multifamily where you invest in and then you're getting cash flow, or if you're not cash flow right away, very soon. Whereas this one, you're waiting until the end, until the cash flow. So yeah, so we're not giving out dividends the first until this is done.
Right.
Until we have cash that's coming in. There are points for our early investors because when we break ground, we're going to recapitalize the deal. I mean, the deal is worth more the
Yeah.
longer you have it and the better the deals are. So those early investors,
Entitled, is that the right word? Entitled once you have
well,
the
we're already
everything.
entitled. Yeah, we
Yeah.
already have all the entitlements
Yeah.
already done. But you still need A&E, you still need architecture and engineering.
Yeah.
So that's still ongoing. But we're already entitled with the city and we're good to go there.
Nice.
Uh, so yeah, the payout and the returns is at the end. When we're done with the building, when we've got it leased up, when it's giving the cash flows, when we can recapitalize again, that's when our investors see the returns.
And on project, just hypothetically speaking, not necessarily each one of these deals, just hypothetic on a development project similar to this size and location and complexity, Where do you see the equity multiple at, like a range, and a timeline for that? And how does that relate to the IRR, being that it's like a
Yeah.
prolonged portion before you get returns?
Well, so it's so the IRRs that we have on these deals, they're in the mid 20s.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and then the returns are because remember it's a 4 year, so it's shortened. A lot of the IRRs we look at in terms of 5 or 7 year deals, the longer the time is the smaller the IRRs. But yeah, equity returns for some of our investors, they're going to get close to 2.6, 2.7. For others investors, they're going to get 2. It depends, or 1.9. It depends on where they enter the deal, and at what capital level that they're bringing into the deal. But that's kind of in generalities.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. In the shortened time frame, then in that 4 years, are you looking then to, I think you would call it to recapitalize. You would refinance the deal to pay off some of the investors then? Is that how that would work?
Yeah, yeah. Essentially, yeah, to
Yeah.
simplify. These are also in opportunity zones also. So we're going to have big opportunity zone funds come in. And then that's going to kind of,
Opportunity zone, but no low income housing. That's interesting. So
correct.
a lot of times those two things are correlated together, aren't they?
Well, so it depends on when the cities had, so almost all cities in the United States require affordable housing
Yep.
with development, obviously, because in the sense of there's everyone is housing is shortage everywhere. But we got in before Philadelphia made that change.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So we got in at a prime opportune moment that won't exist again.
So last question I have on this, and then I want to make sure all the listeners can learn more about the portfolio, and we're going to give them that location where they can do that. What are the risks with this? Like, and I know that you've got a lot of people have looked at this, a lot of very smart people, a lot of uh, actuaries, right? Those guys that go through and pick out the risk and the underwriters and
Yeah.
man, where does the risk lie? Is it political? Is it time? Is it interest rate, insurance? Like where are some of the
Yeah.
big guys that you have to look out
Sure.
for?
Yeah. I mean, so all of those are risk factors. I mean, obviously we mitigated for all of these, or not all, I mean, we mitigated for all of these. Yeah, I mean, things can go wrong, right? I mean,
The hurdles.
yeah, so construction. So when we enter this, um, steel was more expensive, lumber is more expensive. So we can underwrite for that, but now it's cheaper.
Oh, nice.
Okay, let's forget Black Swan, let's forget COVID. I mean, obviously that kind of screws up
Yeah.
everything. But we're using union builders. And you mentioned political. What if the union builders' political stance has changed suddenly? Okay, that could be an issue. We're using HUD financing, which is kind of like the best financing you could ever get. But what if that changes or the interest rate greatly changes? Um, so those risks still happen. What is, I mean, we have engineering. I'm as I'm telling you the risk, I'm telling you what we're mitigating also.
Yep.
You have structural engineering. What if you find out, this is kind of a dumb example, but what if you found that the ground is too soft, right? The building sinks.
Oils. Yep.
Uh, so those kind of things uh, still exist. It's not a cash flowing property. A lot of times when you talk about it, we didn't mention earlier, is when you buy an existing multifamily, if you buy a cash flowing multifamily, um, that allows you to withstand time, right? Because your mortgage is still being paid down.
Yep.
As long as your expenses don't get too high or management doesn't change. So this is not cash flowing until we finish the deal. So are there delays there? But that's why we have the big groups. That's why we have the institutions. That's why we have the largest construction company that's backing this behind us. So that's why you have all of that kind of stuff, and that's
Yeah.
why you have additional insurance on it. But yeah, things could go wrong. You've seen office buildings, for example. I like. I'm sure you read similar news than I do. Office building spaces have gone downwards, and so then there are big office buildings in big cities that are going back to foreclosure and going back to the lender. Um, yeah, I mean those are possibilities, but that's why you deal with experts, and that's why you look to mitigate all these risks.
Yep. Yep. And leverage those relationships of which you've vetted those people going through good cycles, bad cycles, where are their values, all of that, all those things we talked about help mitigate those things. And we will never foresee everything, try to guess everything that could ever happen. But leveraging the experience of the full cycles, good and bad, of those around us, and aligning our values together, all focus. And you keep saying that, the type of environment that you're building and why you're building it, that's aligning values, that's aligning perspectives, that's aligning the target. It's really, really important. So these deals, those returns were great. They give me goosebumps on my legs when I hear them. I have not reviewed any of the actual financials or anything on that, obviously, but just the idea, the culture that you're building, why you're doing it, all that stuff is amazing. And I want to make sure that the listeners can find this. Where's the best place to connect with you and learn more about the open? Are the deals that we're talking about, are those the open opportunities that you have currently?
There's a short time period where it's still open, yes.
Okay. What's the best place for the listeners to find more information and connect with you?
Yeah, so the best place is to come to our website, titan3capital.com, and set up a call with either myself or my other two partners. If you just want to follow along and kind of learn more about me, I'm on social media every day on LinkedIn at Sanjay Sharma MD. So those are the two best places.
Very cool. And that Titan 3 is TITAN, the number three in capital, CAPITAL.com. And that portfolio section is what I'm looking at. This is
Great.
awesome. I love this. I love our conversation. And
That's been great,
hopefully
Greg.
we drop some value there for the
Yeah.
listeners to kind of pick up. And those are the moments where, hey, man, I'm going to be completely transparent. I don't know everything.
Mm.
I'm far from experienced in any of this stuff. I've dabbled, I've stumbled. I've jumped a few hurdles myself, but it's so cool to have these conversations and open that up with like-minded people. Like, we may be worlds apart. We're on two different coasts, uh, two different professions, but we have this passion for entrepreneurship and real estate and sharing and giving value to others. And that's why our values align, Sanjay. So thank you again for your time. I've got one more question for you before we go. If you could go back, um, to last century. Let's go there. We're gonna go there again. Last century.
Yeah.
No, no, not last. Let's go pre 2000.
All right,
Let's
fair
go
enough.
pre 2000. Right? Is that last century?
That's last century. Same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. So
It's
pre
all good.
2000. Make sure my words match my thoughts here.
Uh,
And you could set beside somebody that was on a similar path as you.
hmm.
So where were you? Was that med school?
Yeah,
That
graduated
time
99.
period?
So I was in med school. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if you could go and set beside somebody that was on the same path as Sanjay at that point, but
Yeah.
in this conversation, you would have the knowledge that you have now sitting next to this person, what would you tell them?
Oh, I would tell him not to be afraid of doing so much stuff. There was plenty of times in my life, even after I was married, where we had the opportunity to buy real estate, but we were scared. I didn't buy real estate during the great financial crisis. I mean, I'm old enough. I was an adult back then. People are like, "What?" When things were 40% of what they're worth.
Yeah,
In terms of equities, I skipped the dot-com, boom and bust. So I think people just need to be brave. And then the other thing I would tell myself is figure out and start to expand your mind in terms of what you want and what are the freedoms you're looking for. I didn't know back then, especially in med school, because in med school you're just an apprenticeship. You go to classes and you take tests and then you go to the next year and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it'd have been worth it to be like, hey, let's just step back. Let's look at kind of what you want your life to be in the future. Um, and I think good things did happen. Great things happened to you.
yeah,
So I think
yeah.
kind of advice like that. I
Awesome.
don't want him to talk to a guy like you. You got great enthusiasm,
Oh,
got, got great knowledge. So a guy like you would have helped a younger guy like me.
yeah. But you look back at those times too, it's crazy because even for me, uh, I'm to the point now where I've got to hold stuff farther away from my head to see it. Although sometimes, I look kind of young, but at the same time, my body's getting older. But even for me, when I sit down with someone that maybe just a little bit older than me, and I work them through like a spreadsheet or a Google sheet or how Google folders work or something to
Yeah.
my world is simple because I grew up with that. But even at that point, like YouTube wasn't relevant. It wasn't that easy. I learned to play the guitar for the listeners. I've got a guitar hanging on my back wall here. And this was like right at the beginning of the internet where you could get like music where it was just in
Yeah,
numbers, not in like musical notes. And it wasn't YouTube. It wasn't anything like that. So
yeah,
things have changed. Time has come along.
yeah.
Going through those same time periods where maybe we didn't make those decisions that we feel like we would have made now if we could go back then. But guess what, Sanjay? That has made us who we are.
Yeah.
And there was a reason for those tiny, tiny little 1 degree jumps over our hurdles, or that ability just to pull the trigger. So it's led you into a great spot. And now giving back is so important. And what you're doing, providing these opportunities for other people is so important, and mentoring yourself. So much of this goes on. You've probably had this where you meet somebody 2, 3, 4 years later, and they give you back a one-liner that you said to them, and it's like, whoa, holy
Yeah,
cow,
like actually listen
yes.
to what I said and they remembered. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And then they kind of like that, their little 1 degree turn. It's so awesome. And it comes from stuff like this. So again, Sanjay, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
So much. I've got so much good wishes and good hopes for you, putting out good energy for your guys' project. That's absolutely incredible. I can only imagine how complicated and complex and difficult the struggles are to do developments like this. But when you're doing it for a great cause to build this type of community, I'm just wishing the best for you.
I appreciate that. And thank you for what you're doing. I mean, you were
Awesome.
really, anyone who listens to you, they're getting a little bit of your energy and then learning for you. But that's something to be very proud of.
Well,
So,
thank you so much.
yeah.
Always done with a smile on my face and get me going. It's time to shut me up. We've been talking for quite some time. So, to the listeners out there today, thank you for your time, and always thank you for your attention. If you've got time that you're spending with your family, I say it every single time, every single show, attention is more than time. If that's spending it with your loved one, give them your attention, not just your time. And when you're giving a deal your attention, make sure you've got the attention of other people that's been through it and is doing what you want to do to show you what you should be giving your attention to. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Mogul MD.